Ready when you are.
Hi Andy, all good?
Sanjay, good to see you. Yeah, how are things?
Good. I think the show has been pretty good actually.
Very good.
Good footfalls and a lot of interesting conference material actually.
Yeah.
I just thought that we'll catch up for a while on a few things around the state of the training industry in aviation, and also how do you see things moving from here? How in your opinion, how big is the training industry in terms of revenue size or volume or?
Yes. If you look at the entire market from ab initio through to the hardware and so forth, around the 6 billion mark, with probably about 12% of that, 12.5% on the hardware side.
On the hardware side.
Yeah, so clearly the services and the provisioning side of things
It's really
big and growing bigger, frankly.
Right.
We'll have to if we're to service the fleet growth.
Right.
That is obviously where the growth is going to have to be.
Is that a fair percentage that is required in terms of spend given the investments in aircrafts which are coming up?
Are you asking me if I think it's enough? I think the trick of
6 billion sounds like a very big number, but it's always in the context, right?
Not in the scheme of things, really, though. Is it?
Right.
Looking at the growth rates that we're looking at and the demand, it seems to me a sensible figure.
Right.
And obviously, an awful lot of the spend is going to be in this particular region. And I think a lot of it will be in developing new facilities and structure to
Do you
support the training.
do you think emerging technologies like VR, virtual reality, and AR, do you see significant investments in that from not just airlines but other players in the industry?
I think we're already seeing some. Obviously, some of the maintenance training that's been going on through HoloLens. Recently, there's been a couple of contracts let. I think at the moment, at least, it's difficult to see that transferring into the pilot side of things.
Right.
Possibly more to do with the regulatory environment, which is not conducive to brand new technologies and disruption.
Right.
However, when you look at the cost points, clearly there are some new products on the market, not necessarily yet in the civil side, but certainly in the military side, which show tremendous promise. We've seen a couple in the last 6 months that are really quite capable.
Right.
They've cracked the problem of motion sickness with the headset and the
Right.
motion platform. So that's a big plus. And when you look at networking devices, they become extremely capable. So I think we will see increasing use of that technology. We're already seeing it in maintenance and cabin crew.
Right.
And that seems to be very applicable. Price points are reasonable.
Right.
Volume throughput.
Are you excited or maybe worried about the influx of non-aviation technology companies which are coming into aviation? Because now with VR and AR, because traditionally, these are solutions which have just come up actually, and these are all companies which are not really in the industry domain.
I think it's more excited than worried. I mean, there's no point being worried. The technology is going to come at us whether we like it or not.
Right.
And frankly, we need to make the most of it. The thing that I think is the biggest concern is the loss of knowledge that this industry is currently experiencing at a time when we desperately need to keep it. We are losing a lot of man years of experience and understanding, and there is the problem. If we don't get the training requirement matched to the equipment and keep the quality high, in fact we have to improve it, then we're going to have problems.
Right. What role do you see the regulators playing in this matter?
They have an extraordinarily difficult task. I mean, the rate of change is not what governments are used to dealing with.
Right.
So I think we are already seeing a change from the old command type, you will do this, to frankly a much more positive relationship. How can we help? What do you need? We're not completely there yet, but the signs are very, very positive. And I would love to see more of the regulators come to meetings like this. I don't think they need to be afraid of having a tough time.
Right.
Obviously, there's going to be some tough questions, but the market as a whole and the community as a whole understands we need to be together on this, and it's not going to work unless we are.
Right. How do you see cabin crew and maintenance training in terms of visibility? Because traditionally there's a lot of talk and focus on pilot training.
Yes.
So what do you think needs to be done to ensure that these streams are also getting a bit more of the budgets?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, clearly both are critical. I mean, if you look at the recent incidents and accidents, it is the cabin crew, once the aircraft is down, who ensure the safety of the passengers. Similarly with the maintainers, I mean, their work is largely behind the scenes, and this is the problem with both.
Right.
Their role is not well understood, certainly in the public domain, and even in the airline sector. Obviously the focus is on the glitzy side of the business, but they're essential, and I don't know, frankly, how we ensure that they get the resources they need.
Right.
But they need more than they are getting, I think. Not in every case, but in some.
These big numbers of 35,000 pilots required in the next 2 decades.
Yes.
Nobody is really talking about the number of cabin crew required.
No.
Maintenance engineers, yes. I think there are some numbers emerging now, but isn't that something that
Yeah, I think there's an assumption that it's
is
an
gonna
attractive
happen.
career. I'm not entirely sure that's the case, but I think it's attractive enough to attract enough people.
Right.
But it's a profession, and I think that it's underestimated the amount of effort that's required from the recruit,
Right.
and the dedication and focus that they need to bring. But those two other sectors are absolutely critical for the future of the industry.
Do you see the pilot shortage not being a problem somewhere in the future? Maybe even half a decade down the line, mainly due to the emergence of the unmanned vehicles, the drone pilots, and so on.
We were talking about this yesterday, and the new generations, the Generation Z, the millennials, are obviously far more trusting of technology than some of the more senior people like me. So as we see automatic vehicles and so on the roads, I think people will become more comfortable with the concept. But I have a hard time getting past the idea of a completely pilotless aircraft in the very near future. Freight, yes, that's maybe a different ballgame. I can see at some point perhaps a single pilot in the cockpit monitoring, but I would think that may be just short haul, because being alone up the front monitoring the situation would be a tough job for a long period of time.
Right.
So I think there may be some savings. We may not need quite as many pilots perhaps, but inevitably the load anyway is enormous, and whether we can find enough pilots, I think, is the biggest challenge that the industry has as a whole, and not just industry. The governments need to realize this too.
Right. How do you see online training evolving, given both of these factors? One is the need to still have knowledgeable people on board, and also on ground, as well as emerging technologies and the need to move away from people dependence. So these are all online technologies, or rather off-board technologies, maybe.
Yes.
In terms of training, they are likely to play a very important role. But the question is, how do you see that in terms of balancing that the requirement of
I think it is obviously a potentially huge benefit, and frankly it fits the coming generations.
Right.
They're comfortable with the technology. In fact, they're more comfortable with the technology than they are necessarily face to face. So I think there's a massive potential there, and the beauty of it is it's location and time independent.
Mm-hmm.
So you can train, and in fact the way training is going, we have a games activity going on in the cabin crew right now, and it's difficult to see some more engaged groups, and I think that's the sort of potential that we have. As we bring some different thinking into the way training can be done, it becomes less of a task, frankly, and more of almost an enjoyable exercise.
right.
the critical point is going to be the measurement.
Right.
The evidence-based training piece, I think, again, lends itself very, very well to the online side of things.
Right.
So I suspect that will be one of the most rapidly developing parts of the market in the future, because you can reach so many more people so much more quickly and in a standardized format.
But doesn't it worry you that the regulators and also the authorities and even IQ, they don't really have any specific guidelines on distance training or on use of online training? I think it's probably to make up a figure. I think still 90% of the regulations are really about hands-on classroom training. If this,
that's an interesting point. I don't think I'm too concerned about that, as long as the training effectiveness is measured. Clearly there is a tremendous amount of talent in the airlines, in the providers of the training equipment, in the providers of the curriculum, and I can't see that it needs to be over-regulated. But I do believe that unless we're measuring what we're getting out, then there is a problem. If we're not certain that this is working,
right,
I would agree there would be a problem there.
right,
But again, it's moving, it's changing so rapidly that the regulators would struggle to keep up.
All right. Thank you, Andy. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
As always, Sanjay, thank you very much.